Hey guys, tonight we're going to a speck of land so far out in the Pacific. It feels like the edge of the world. The air is thick with salt. The sea grumbles like it's got secrets, and the ground beneath your bare feet is coarse, sun-baked, and ancient. You stand still for a moment, and there they are, looming in the distance. Dozens of massive stone heads, their expressions unreadable, their backs to the ocean, staring inland like silent sentinels. Welcome to Rapa Nui, Easter Island. And let's be honest, you probably won't survive this without a splinter, sunburn, or an existential crisis about stone tools and human ambition. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, if you're up for it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrived just before dawn, ash-gray sky fading into pale orange over the endless horizon. Your canoe has scraped onto black volcanic rock after weeks of ocean drift. You're sunburned, underfed, and, let's admit it, not entirely sure if you're hallucinating or are actually seeing stone faces rise from the earth like buried gods. They're enormous. Some are 10 feet tall, others 20. Their heads, carved with long noses and sloped brows, peer toward the heart of the island, not the sea. Interestingly, watching over what used to be the villages of Rapa Nui, you stumble onto shore, your limbs aching from the voyage. A group of local Rapa Nui descendants offers you water from a calabash gourd. Their eyes, dark and searching, follow your gaze to the rows of moai, as if waiting to see if you understand their presence. Spoiler, you don't. Not yet. The island is windswept and grassy, sprinkled with volcanic craters, like someone plucked the moon's pockmarks and flung them here. Your nose catches a whiff of salt and fire, the ocean and the hearths of early morning cooking fires. Chickens cluck somewhere behind a cluster of low, stone-walled huts. You're led to a small campsite near the base of one of the moai platforms, ahu they're called. The statues here aren't standing. They're toppled, cracked, their massive heads half buried in the soil like forgotten thoughts. An elder sits beside you as the fire crackles. Her voice is like wind over gravel, soft, worn, but steady. She tells you this place was once alive with chanting and carving and hauling. That each statue holds the mana, the spirit energy, of a clan's ancestor. That turning your back to the moai is disrespectful, unless you're part of the moai yourself. You try to wrap your modern brain around this. These heads aren't just oversized garden gnomes. They were made with devotion, effort, and, let's be real, possibly a bit of obsession. Over 900 statues, the island. That's like one per football field. Who does that? Why? Historians still argue whether the first settlers came from the Marquesas, the Gambier Islands, or somewhere even further. The consensus is Polynesians arrived by outrigger canoes sometime around 800 C. They brought bananas, chickens, and obsidian tools, and what must have been wild levels of optimism. Because this island, it's tiny, about 63 square miles. That's it. No rivers, no great forests anymore. And plot twist, no obvious way to haul 80-ton statues around for fun. But the people who came here saw more than rock and grass. They saw a homeland, a place where they could carve their lineage into stone and raise it high for their descendants to see. And for centuries, they did. You rise to your feet and start walking inland, following the muddy trail that leads from the coast toward the quarry, the birthing place of the moai. As you walk, you pass rows of partially buried statues, their heads peeking out like they're eavesdropping. The air is warm now, thick with moisture. You squint into the hills ahead, where one of the volcanoes, Reino Raraco, rises like a sleeping beast. It's here, you're told, that ever moai was born, carved straight from the volcanic tuff, with only stone tools and sheer will. But that's for tomorrow. Tonight, you lie on your back beside a fallen moai, its cheek resting in the dirt. You stare up at the stars above Rapa Nui. There's no light pollution out here, just a galaxy sprawled across the sky like spilled sugar. The statue beside you stares upward too, as if it's still trying to remember who it once honored. A rooster crows somewhere in the distance. Your eyelids grow heavy. The mystery isn't solved, but you've taken the first step. You wake just before dawn. The sky still smudged in charcoal and plum. A thin mist curls across the grassy slopes, and from where you lie beside the fallen moai, you can just make out the silhouette of a distant crater rising ahead. Reino Raraku, the sacred quarry. That's where you're headed. That's where they carved the giants. You trudge up the slope, feet sinking into damp earth, your legs already regretting this. The ground hums with bird calls, red-tailed tropic birds, brown nadas, and the occasional grunt of wild horses. Yes, horses. Introduced centuries later, now half-feral. They gallop between ancient statues like they own the place. You nod at them like, yeah, same energy, and continue the climb. As the sun rises, light spills over the crater, revealing dozens, no, hundreds, of moai scattered like a forgotten army. Some are fully carved, standing upright, but sunken up to their shoulders in soil. Others lie flat, halfway emerged from the rock face, as if they simply gave up mid-pose. They all face inland, always inland, never the ocean, as if the sea wasn't something to admire, but something to turn your back on. You enter the crater itself, and suddenly the noise fades. It's quiet here, eerily so. The volcanic bowl is a cathedral of stone, sacred and still. The walls are pocked with the beginnings of moai, faces just emerging from the rock, like dreams becoming solid. This is where it all started, where centuries of belief were carved inch by inch, tooth by tooth. A master carver greets you. His name is Machua, and he's got the kind of shoulders you only get from a lifetime of swinging stone tools. He offers you one, an elongated, polished hunk of hard basalt. It's heavy, surprisingly so. You try to lift it like a modern chisel and almost drop it on your own foot. Machua laughs, then shows you how to hold it properly. You'll be here a while. Carving a moai starts with the head and works downward, the entire statue remaining horizontal until it's time to detach it from the rock face. You start small, chipping away at the eye ridge, smoothing the forehead. Each strike echoes slightly, the sound swallowed by the crater. Dust rises in puffs, sticking to your sweat. You can already feel a blister forming, and you've barely made a dent. One historical fact: each moai is carved from a single block of tuff, a compressed volcanic ash that's surprisingly soft compared to other stone. That softness helps, but it's also deceiving. You still need years, yes, years, to complete a single statue. It's estimated some moai took 5 to 6 men more than a year to finish. And there's no eraser. One slip, one bad angle, and you're starting over. Or worse, accidentally creating the wonky uncle statue that everyone laughs at during ceremonies. No pressure. As you work, Machua explains how each clan had its own carvers, each one competing in a kind of sacred arms race. Bigger moai meant more prestige, more mana. It wasn't about individual glory. It was about honoring the ancestor, keeping the clan strong, rooted, watched over. The moai didn't just represent a person. They were that person. The spirit, elevated. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some of the unfinished moai are over 60 feet long. One of them weighs around 270 tons. It's never been moved. Scholars call it the El Gigante. You call it a solid nope. You glance at one of the half-carved giants still embedded in the cliff face. Its nose is nearly finished, lips slightly parted like it's about to offer life advice in a gravelly baritone. You wonder if the carvers talked to their moai, whispered secrets, sang songs. Probably. These statues were never just objects. They were treated like living beings. In some ceremonies, food was even left at their base, like offerings to an elder who never quite died. And of course, historians still argue whether the moai were originally painted in bright colors. There's trace evidence of red and white pigments in the quarry and around some platforms. So yes, it's very possible these solemn stone faces were once painted up like carnival masks. Not exactly the stoic vibe they give off now, huh? A light drizzle starts to fall, slicking the rock and cooling your skin. You take a break, hands raw, and sit on a ledge overlooking the half-buried moai field below. There's something oddly comforting about the view. These rows of ancient, half-finished ancestors frozen in mid-becoming. It's as if they're waiting for someone to finish their story. You turn back to your own carving. You've made progress. The brow is defined now, the eye sockets beginning to take shape. You catch Matua watching from across the slope. He nods once, a quiet approval. The sun begins to dip again, casting long shadows that make the moai seem even taller, more alive. You walk down from the quarry, feet aching, basalt chisel slung across your back like a prehistoric guitar. Back at camp, you pass a younger carver who's sculpting something smaller. A moai kavakava, a gaunt, ribcage exposed figure used in ritual dances. Unlike the stoic giants, these figures look skeletal, haunted. It's a reminder that not all Rapa Nui art was about strength and stability. Some was about fragility, fear, change. The fire crackles again. Someone passes you a bowl of taro stew. It's bland but warm, and right now that's enough. You lie down again beside your old friend, the fallen moai. The stars blink awake one by one, and a warm wind brushes across your face. Your arms are sore. Your clothes smell like stone dust and ash. But your statue has a brow now, a shape, a beginning. By now, your hands are blistered, your shoulders aching, and your lower back is filing daily complaints to the union of neglected muscles. But congratulations, you've carved a forehead, maybe half a nose. Time to make some real progress. You return to the quarry early, fog still hugging the slopes of Reino Raraku. The moai slumber all around, their heads poking out of the earth like ancient mushrooms. Some tilt slightly, as if they've spent centuries listening to gossip on the wind. You duck under a ledge and settle back into your carving spot. The tools are laid out, basalt picks, chisels, and a round, palm-sized stone used for smoothing, called a toki. Your assigned moai waits patiently. It has no choice. Matua joins you, chewing something that looks like the world's oldest piece of jerky. He gestures to the next phase, the cheeks, chin, and that long, iconic nose. You nod like you understand exactly how to chisel centuries of spiritual reverence into a hunk of ash rock. You begin. The work is rhythmic. Tap, tap, scrape. Tap, tap, scrape. Your arms find their own tempo, like a drumbeat against the bones of the island. Here's a mainstream fact to keep your mind busy. The typical moai features exaggerated facial features, elongated noses, prominent brows, thin lips, but they're all carved in a consistent style, almost like a signature. Scholars believe this stylization reflected ancestral authority, not individual portraits. These weren't selfies. They were symbols of lineage, of mana, the sacred force believed to radiate from worthy ancestors. But here's where things get weird. There are statues with subtle variations, rounder faces, sharper chins, eyes unusually wide. Some even look unfinished, or just off. A few fringe theories suggest certain moai may have represented specific individuals who fell out of favor, or even been satirical. Can you imagine? Someone devotes a year carving a 10-ton stone roast of the village elder? Bold move. The debate continues. Historians still argue whether the uniformity of moai features was an intentional choice to show unity across clans, or a practical result of having only so many carvers trained in one dominant style. After all, this wasn't a tourist operation. It was a sacred, dangerous, and deeply political process. By midday, the sun is merciless, and your stone-smooth cheeks feel just as worn as the one you're shaping. You break for water near one of the famous eyeless statues, still buried up to its shoulders. Matua sits beside you and, without a word, draws a rough shape in the dirt, the outline of a coral eye, and inside it, a tiny red stone pupil. You raise a brow. He explains, once a moai was erected, it might have had coral eyes inserted, white coral for the scara, red scoria, or black obsidian for the pupils. Only then, it said, did the statue see. Only then was it spiritually awake. But here's the kicker. Barely any of those eyes survive. Just a few fragments. So archaeologists have had to play detective, piecing together clues from sculptures, oral tradition, and, you guessed it, heated academic arguments. Some say the eyes were reserved for only the most powerful moai. Others think they were added in later periods, during ceremonies or clan feasts. Either way, there's something chilling about the idea that the moai weren't meant to be blind. They were meant to watch. You get back to carving. The chin is taking shape now, strong and boxy, a typical moai trait. There's no neck. The head flows directly into broad shoulders, like a boulder in a dress shirt. The bodies of most moai are actually full-length torsos, but many are partially buried, making them look like just giant heads. That's what most people get wrong. Another quirky twist: archaeologists have found petroglyphs, carvings of birds, fish, even phallic symbols, etched onto the backs of some moai, like stone tattoos. Who did that? Was it part of the original design, or added later by cheeky islanders with a sense of humor? You're not sure whether to be reverent or amused. The afternoon rolls in with a dry breeze. Machua has gone silent, focused on a nearby statue of his own. His chisel taps echo down the slope. You find yourself working faster now, more sure of your hand. Your moai begins to feel like something. Someone. You wipe sweat from your brow and whisper a small apology to the rock when you chip a little too deep near the lip. This thing's practically family now. As the sun dips lower, you gather your tools and stand back to admire your progress. It's still a far cry from the finished statues dotting the island's coasts, but it's coming to life. Its brow is bold, nose proud, jaw unwavering. It stares into the earth, unblinking. Night falls quickly on Rapa Nui. You return to camp, where the fire is already crackling and someone's roasting a small, not quite identifiable bird. A young carver plops down beside you and starts carving a tiny moai out of driftwood. It's barely 3 inches tall, but already wears that same solemn expression. You glance at him, then at your dirt-smudged hands. Somehow, you understand each other. Before bed, you sneak one last look at the quarry. The moai glow faintly under moonlight, their expressions unreadable. You wonder how many carvers stood just where you are now, centuries ago, hoping to honor someone long gone. You lie down beside your usual companion, the fallen moai. Tonight, it feels like it's watching you a little more closely. Or maybe that's just the starlight playing tricks again. You wake to the sound of chiseling. Not birdsong, not fire crackle chiseling. Soft, methodical, and relentless. The carvers are already at work in the quarry, tapping and scraping like the island itself has a heartbeat. You roll onto your side, stretch your sore arms, and groan like someone twice your age. Your moai waits for you, not impatiently, not judgmentally, just waiting, like it knows time means very little to a stone that's already older than most recorded history. Today, you're shaping the most expressive parts of the face, the eyes, the nose, the mouth. And trust me, it's not the kind of arts and crafts moment where a couple of googly eyes would fix everything. This part determines whether your moai looks noble and stoic, or vaguely like it smelled something it didn't like. You begin at the brow, deepening the ridge. Moai eyes weren't rounded like modern statues. They were carved as narrow, slanted ovals, giving them a heavy-lidded, half-awake appearance. You work slowly, brushing away dust with each chisel stroke. One slip and the symmetry is gone. And when you're dealing with a face that's 10 feet tall, that's a pretty big slip. A little-known fact: although most moai look similar, there's subtle variation in their features that may reflect changes over time. Earlier moai tend to be shorter and broader, while later ones stretch taller and leaner, as if the Rapa Nui people were slowly evolving their ancestors into skyscrapers. Machua stops by your work. He squints, then grunts approval. Or indigestion. Hard to tell. Good nose, he says finally. Looks like my uncle. You beam. His uncle must have been impressive. Now for the mouth. It's a thin line, slightly downturned at the corners. Not sad, not angry, just serious. The moai don't smile. They don't need to. Their power isn't in expression, it's in presence. Still, there's something comforting in their blank gaze, like a parent watching silently, ready to catch you if you fall, or at least say, "I told you so" when you do. But here's a fringe theory to chew on. Some researchers believe the moai weren't just symbols of ancestors, but also functioning talismans, psychological anchors that gave islanders a sense of stability during rough times. Drought, the Moai are watching. Famine, the Moai still stand. The world might collapse, but your ancestor remains, face carved in stone, judging your every move like a sacred HOA president. You take a break and wander through the quarry. One statue in particular draws your attention. It's enormous, nearly 30 feet long, still fused to the rock wall. Its face is only half finished, the mouth just a faint outline. It looks like it was interrupted mid-sentence. You ask Matua why it was abandoned. Bad omen, he mutters. You wait for more, but that's all you get. Bad omen. Maybe the rock cracked. Maybe the carver died. Or maybe someone just didn't like the way it looked and said, scrap it. Either way, it lies there, a permanent half-idea. You return to your own statue, smoothing the cheekbones, rounding the jawline. The Moai's face is full now, strong, expressionless, eternal. You realize, with a sudden flicker of unease, that this statue looks familiar. Not just in the "I've been chiseling this thing for days" way, but deeply familiar, like someone you knew in a past life, or a version of yourself, slowed down and made heavy with time. You shake the thought away. Too many sun hours, not enough coconut water. One debate that still haunts archaeologists. Why do the statues all face inland? Theories abound. Some say it was to watch over the people. Others argue it was symbolic, facing their descendants, blessing the land. A few even suggest the Moai's backs to the sea reflected a deeper distrust of the ocean, which, while providing food, was also the source of storms and danger. The sea was exile. The land was home. You glance over your shoulder. The Pacific glitters in the distance, impossibly vast. And yeah, if you'd crossed all that in a wooden canoe with no GPS, you might turn your back on it too. As the afternoon deepens, you work with Matua to smooth the final edges of your statue's face. He teaches you how to rub the tough stone with rough palm bark soaked in water and ash. The surface takes on a sheen, as if oiled. Your Moai's features settle into permanence. And then comes the ritual. Matua draws a line of red pigment across the statue's brow. Just a thin swipe. He sings quietly, a tune more breath than melody, and gestures for you to repeat after him. You do, not understanding the words, but feeling their weight. He presses your palm to the statue's forehead and says something you'll never forget. Now it remembers you. It's not just stone anymore. It's part of you. You step back, heart strangely full. Around you, the quarry hums with activity, carvers chipping, tools clinking, the wind threading through half-carved faces like a whispered prayer. You're not just shaping stone. You're shaping memory, identity, something that might outlive even the idea of you. Night falls. The wind picks up, rustling the tall grasses. A fire flickers beside your tent, and someone is singing low and slow in the Rapa Nui tongue. You fall asleep under the weight of stars. Your Moai's face etched in your mind like it's watching you dream. By now, your Moai has a face. A real face. Not just a vague, maybe it's a rock, maybe it's Uncle Matu kind of thing, but something with personality, presence, and power. It stares into the quarry with quiet judgment, as if deciding whether it approves of your efforts, or whether it's just waiting to be released from the stone, like a genie made of lava dust. But it's not done. Not even close. This morning, Matua leads you down a narrow path that snakes through the Moai field like a trail of spilled thoughts. He stops before a series of flat stones laid out in a low, curving wall ahu. This is where the Moai eventually end up, not just standing anywhere, but on carefully built ceremonial platforms. These are sacred stages, a kind of ancestral theater where the stone ancestors stand facing the living. You glance back toward the quarry, where your Moai still lies horizontal. You still need to finish carving the body, release it from the bedrock, and get it somehow to its final resting place. But today, you're here to learn about the eyes. Matua crouches beside a broken Moai near the edge of the ahu. Its face is cracked, lips chipped, but the eye sockets are intact. He points to the deep grooves, once holders for coral and redstone eyes. Now that you know to look, you can imagine them. Huge, White coral eyes with red or black pupils, staring across the fields with impossible intensity. It's a little unsettling. You kind of prefer the eyeless, mysterious version. Eyes make it feel like you're being graded. The idea of inserting coral eyes only after the moai are raised is fascinating. It means the statues weren't active until the very last step. It's like building a robot, then switching it on with a spark from the divine. The moai went from sculpture to sacred presence in one final moment. One historical fact: only a few coral eye fragments have ever been found. Most were probably stolen, destroyed, or simply decayed over time. But one particularly well-preserved eye was discovered in the 1970s, confirming that yes, the moai weren't blind. They were merely waiting. Matua leads you to a hut near the coastline, where artisans prepare coral and obsidian for eye making. They show you the technique: grinding coral into the rough oval, polishing obsidian into a piercing iris, and fitting it into a hollow with plant resin. It's delicate work. You try to help and immediately ruin 2 pupils and a coral ring. Matua gently removes the tools from your hands with the same expression you'd use when taking a marker from a toddler drawing on the wall. You're better with big stone, apparently. But the real question, one that still stirs debate among archaeologists, is whether all moai ever had eyes, or just the ones closest to major ceremonial centers. Some say only the elite statues, representing high-ranking chiefs or spiritual leaders, received the full eye treatment. Others argue every moai had them at some point, but centuries of erosion and colonization swept them away. There's even an eerie theory that the eyes were inserted during rituals where the living would consult the ancestors, as if the statues could answer questions like divine 8 balls, but much, much heavier. Whether or not this is true, one thing is clear: once the eyes were in, the moai saw. And whatever they saw, they remembered. You spend the rest of the day helping an elder artisan repair a fallen moai. It had been toppled long ago, maybe by an earthquake, maybe by rival clans. You're not sure. The coral eyes were long gone, but remnants of red pigment cling to the cheeks, as if the statue once wore ceremonial paint like war paint, or maybe makeup. There's no rule book for this kind of spirituality. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some researchers believe the red pigment used on moai came from powdered scoria, a lightweight volcanic rock found in only certain parts of the island. It was mixed with shark oil, water, and, brace yourself, sometimes even human blood. You pause at that one. Matua shrugs. Gives it power, he says. You're starting to think ancient Rapa Nui spiritual practices were just one ingredient away from a metal album cover. As the sun lowers and the sky glows gold, you watch the moai in the distance, some standing, some buried, some toppled. You wonder how it felt to be part of a society where stone ancestors weren't just symbols, but active, involved presences in everyday life. Where your great-great-grandfather watched over your fishing, your planting, your arguments, and your failures, and silently judged it all. You walk back through the field with the artisans, passing moai with faces worn smooth by rain and wind. One has a deep gouge across the jaw or wound, a lightning strike, a careless ox. Historians still argue whether the damage to many moai was from natural disasters or intentional acts of rivalry and rebellion. When island society fractured due to resource scarcity, overpopulation, or political strife, it's believed that clans may have toppled each other's moai as a way to sever ancestral power, kind of like a spiritual turf war, but with more volcanic rock. You reach camp just as night falls. A pot of something unidentifiable but delicious simmers over the fire. Someone sings a slow, looping chant that's less about melody and more about rhythm, a song to remind the moai who they are, or maybe to remind you who you are. You lie down beside your carving once more, and tonight, it really does look like it might open its coral eyes and blink. You try to imagine that moment when a statue, after months of carving and hauling and lifting, finally stands, crowned with red stone and lit by the setting sun, eyes glowing white. You think, maybe the moai weren't made to be looked at. Maybe they were made to look back. The moai is almost free. Your carving lies nearly detached from the quarry wall now, resting in a shallow cradle of rock. You've shaped its face, smoothed its torso, and begun defining its strong, slope-shouldered silhouette. But before the final cut, you pause, because there's a much thornier question lurking just beneath the stone. Who gets the moai? Matua takes you down the slope, past a set of low, moss-covered stones that form a kind of council circle. Here, several clan leaders gather under a thatched canopy, their feathered cloaks fluttering in the breeze. Their faces are carved with deep-set lines, some literal tattoos, others just the creases of decades in the island sun. They're seated in a half-circle, legs folded, eyes narrowed. The topic: which clan earns the right to receive the next moai? And it's not exactly a polite tea party. The elder to your left speaks first, thumping a carved staff into the dirt. His clan claims seniority. His great-grandfather was among the first to arrive on the island. Another elder interrupts, citing a long drought 3 seasons ago that ruined his clan's crops, and how the moai's mana could restore balance. A third man says nothing but stares forward, his face unreadable, fingers drumming lightly on his knee. This isn't about ego. Not entirely. This is sacred politics. Moai aren't just stone. They're ancestral embodiments, protectors of prosperity, fertility, and clan prestige. To receive one is to be granted the ultimate blessing. To be passed over is a quiet humiliation. You watch the back and forth like someone caught in a sacred episode of Survivor, Volcanic Edition. There's huffing, murmuring, a tense silence, and finally agreement. The honor will go to the Reno tribe, the easternmost clan. Their lineage traces back to Hotomatue himself, the legendary first settler of Rapa Nui. Whether that's historically accurate or just great PR, you're not sure. But no one argues. One mainstream fact: while the moai were carved by specialists at the central quarry, the clans requesting them were scattered across the island. Each moai was commissioned, so to speak, by a family or community seeking to honor their ancestor. That meant every statue was deeply personal. The carvers might not even know the man or woman it represented, but the emotion poured into the work was no less reverent. Now that the Reno tribe's claim has been accepted, a delegation arrives at the quarry to inspect your moai. They walk slowly, some barefoot, stepping carefully over stone debris and low grass tufts. They circle your statue with quiet murmurs. One of them touches the jawline, then nods to you with something between gratitude and solemn challenge. And here's the quirky bit. While most moai are assumed to represent male ancestors, a handful, based on torso shape and subtle facial features, may have represented women. It's rare and often debated, but a few archaeologists argue there were female moai made to honor powerful matriarchs or priestesses. Others think the rounded forms were simply stylistic evolution or artistic interpretation. As always, historians still argue. Matua makes the final cut. He slides a wedge into the narrow gap between the moai's back and the quarry floor. You brace yourself. He taps the wedge once, twice, and then, with a low grinding noise, the statue separates from the earth. Not a crash, not a thunderclap, just a long sigh of stone finally exhaling after centuries in slumber. It's a moment so quiet, you swear even the wind pauses. And now the statue is theirs. The Reno men begin preparations to move it. A sled will be constructed from palm trunks, lashed with ropes made of bark fiber. You watch as the logistics unfold with startling precision. These are people who've done this before, many times, and each time, they act like it's the first, like it's holy. That night, the Reno clan hosts a feast at the edge of the quarry. Roasted taro, smoked fish, cracked coconuts. There's laughter again, and songs that rise into the darkness, carried on the wind like prayers with rhythm. You are given a necklace woven from reeds and small bones, an unexpected honor. Matua sits beside you, staring into the flames. You carved well, he says. It will stand a long time. You want to ask how long? 100 years? 1,000? Longer? But he just closes his eyes. If it is remembered, he says, it never falls. Later, you watch the Reno men gather around your moai, now lying flat on a bed of logs. They speak to it, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like they're greeting an old friend. One even touches the stone nose, lips moving with a half-smile. You lie down in the grass, hands sore, mind buzzing. Your moai no longer belongs to you. It never really did. But you were part of its story. Your sweat is in its grooves. Your breath shaped its mouth. Your shadow once fell across its blank eyes. And tomorrow, it begins its long journey across the island. The next morning, the island is alive with movement. The sun barely peeks over the horizon before the Reno clan is up, stretching rope, testing sled logs, and barking instructions with the urgency of people preparing a very large, very sacred stone to go on a cross-country hike. You trail behind the preparations, rubbing sleep from your eyes. The moai, your moai, though you're trying to be emotionally mature about it, is lashed to a sled frame made of lashed palm trunks. It's tilted slightly, its broad back resting on the curve of the logs, like it's sleeping through the whole thing. You know better. The mana is strong today. Machua stands beside you, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. It moves today, he says, but the strength comes from within. You nod solemnly, though part of you is mostly wondering how the physics are supposed to work. Here's your mainstream historical fact for the day. Moving a moai wasn't just engineering. It was a spiritual act. Most scholars believe the Rapa Nui people used a combination of sleds, log rollers, and human power to haul these multi-ton statues across the island. Some of them traveled over 10 miles to reach their final platforms. No wheels, no metal, just bark rope, tree trunks, and what was likely a lot of shouting. But here's the quirky bit. Oral tradition tells a different story. According to the Rapa Nui, the moai walked. No, not like Pixar animation. But still, some legends say the statues were imbued with mana so powerful they could literally walk to their platforms, guided by priestly chants and ancestral energy. That's a lot more poetic than 7 guys pushing it with logs. And frankly, kind of cooler. Some archaeologists used to dismiss this as folklore. But here's where it gets fun. Recent experiments have shown that, with the right technique, you actually can make a moai walk by rocking it upright side to side with coordinated rope pulls. Think of it like moving a refrigerator across the floor by shimmying it. Only, 12 feet tall and 80 tons. Easy. Historians still argue whether this walking method was actually used or just a lucky modern rediscovery. Some say the rock damage along the statue's bases suggests dragging, not rocking. Others counter that different methods may have been used for different sizes, times, or clans. In short, nobody agrees, but everyone's intrigued. You don't have to wait long for a demonstration. The Reno men gather at either side of the statue, each team holding thick ropes twisted from how tree bark. A lead chanter steps forward, his voice deep, hypnotic, and begins a rhythmic chant that seems to pull the air into sync. The ropes go taut. The statue shifts, and it moves, side to side, slow and lumbering, like a creature remembering how to walk after centuries of sleep. With each coordinated tug, the moai edges forward on the packed earth. Dust kicks up. Men grunt. A pig squeals somewhere in the background, apparently not impressed. But you're spellbound. There's something otherworldly about it. The moai doesn't look dragged. It looks alive, like it's willing itself toward its final place, pulled not just by ropes, but by memory. You fall into step with the procession. The path leads down from the quarry, over grassy slopes, and through a narrow grove of wind-warped trees. Every so often, the chanter changes rhythm. The pull teams adjust their pattern, and the moai sways forward like a pendulum made of stone and history. Villagers line the route, some bringing food, others singing encouragement. Children dart between the legs of the rope pullers, giggling. One elder woman reaches out and gently presses her palm to the moai's side as it passes, then whispers a name you don't catch. Maybe it's the ancestor the statue represents. Maybe it's just what she feels the statue should be called. Either way, the moai keeps walking. You ask Machua how long the journey will take. He shrugs. Depends how well it listens. There's a brief rest at midday. The team eats boiled taro and grilled fish wrapped in leaves. You share water with the pullers, and someone hands you a pouch of something spicy that sets your mouth on fire and clears your sinuses in under 6 seconds. Cleansing, sure. Delicious. Questionable. As you chew, you catch a glimpse of the moai again, looming above the resting crew, ropes slack, its face still staring forward with quiet resolve. You wonder, not for the first time, what it feels like to be carved into memory, to be heavy with the weight of meaning, even if you never chose it. Matua sits beside you, rolling a pebble between his fingers. Moai are not gods, he says. They're bridges, between breath and stone, between now and before. You want to ask what happens when people stop believing in the bridge, but the words never quite form. That night, you camp beside the moai again. Its silhouette cuts into the moonlight, the ropes still wrapped around its base like half-forgotten dreams. You lie in the grass, watching stars flicker through palm fronds. And you begin to dream, not of walking statues or chanting rituals, but of an ancestor who stepped onto this island centuries before you, carrying only memory and hope. You see them raise their eyes to a blank cliff face, run their hand over cool volcanic ash, and begin to carve. You wake to the sound of ropes tightening and men chanting, low, steady, and full of breath, like the wind has learned to sing. The moai's journey continues. The path today winds upward, yes, upward, because of course it does. You squint toward the destination, a platform on a ridge overlooking the eastern coast. An ahu in progress, freshly layered with black basalt stones and thick tufts of dry grass still clinging to its edges. The Reno clan has been preparing it for months, maybe longer. Now, the moai is finally coming home. As the pull teams gather again, Matua hands you one of the guide ropes. You blink at him, confused. You've carved, he says. Now you carry. You nod. Naturally. Every artist eventually carries the weight of their creation, right? Even when it weighs multiple tons and has a face that silently judges your posture. With a tug and a chant, the statue begins to rock again. Left, right, left. A walking rhythm, like the sea's own breathing. You fall into step, feeling the rope pulse in your hands. It's not strength that moves the moai. It's coordination, belief, and occasionally, shouting. Here's your historical fact of the day. The Rapa Nui people used no beasts of burden, no oxen, no horses, no carts. The moai were moved entirely by human power. That fact alone has baffled and inspired archaeologists for centuries. How could such a small, isolated population move statues the size of subway cars? Answer: teamwork, clever engineering, and possibly a refusal to admit that something can't be done. But let's pause for a weird, wonderful moment. Halfway up the ridge, the procession stops to rest near a pile of small, carved stone balls, pohaku. These weren't part of the moai moving process. There's something stranger. Some believe pohaku were used in ceremonial games, or possibly rituals. Others suggest they may have been used for shaping or balancing the moai during travel. But one fringe theory, that they were placed along travel routes as spiritual boosters, like checkpoints of mana. That's right, ancient Rapa Nui power-ups. You consider pocketing one, but something about Matua's side eye says, don't anger the ancestors. As you sit beneath a crooked tree, Matua offers you a gourd of fermented root drink. It tastes like spicy dirt and old secrets. You sip it anyway, because apparently that's what bonding with history tastes like. A breeze rustles through the grasses, and from this vantage point, you see other moai in the distance. Dozens, lined along the coast, their backs to the sea, their faces to the past. And even though they're miles apart, they seem somehow connected, like punctuation in the story of the land. Historians still argue whether these statues were intentionally placed in visual alignment with one another, or if their positions were purely symbolic within clan territories. But you can't shake the feeling that they're communicating, watching, holding space for something too big to name. The final ascent is steep. The ropes tighten. The chants deepen. You lean into the pull, every muscle aching, sweat dripping into your eyes. The moai sways, then stops, perfectly balanced on a ledge just meters from the ahu. Now comes the delicate part, positioning. This isn't just plop it down and call it a day. No, the moai must be placed upright on the platform, carefully, precisely, and without cracking into a dozen emotionally devastating pieces. The team replaces the sled logs with wedge stones and sets up thick ropes around a pivot post. You watch in awe as they gradually raise the statue with a series of levers, pulleys, and sheer determination. The moment it lifts, slow, trembling, rising from the earth like a memory resurrected. Your breath catches. It stands. The ropes hold. The base settles onto a bed of crushed basalt. Someone lets out a victorious yell, quickly hushed by a sharp word from one of the elders. This is sacred. You don't cheer at a resurrection. You bow. The statue is now officially an ancestor. Matua approaches with a red scoria tapna, called a pakeo. It's lighter than the statue, but still hundreds of pounds, and dyed a deep, earthy crimson. The pakeo is a symbol of prestige. Not all moai get one, but this one does. With ropes and ladders, the team carefully lifts it onto the moai's head. It tilts slightly, wobbles, holds. It looks ridiculous and majestic all at once, like a boulder wearing a beret. But somehow it works. The moai feels taller now, not just physically, but spiritually. A short ceremony follows. The clan's priest murmurs blessings in the old tongue, rubbing white coral dust between his fingers and letting it drift into the air. The elder who first claimed the statue touches its chest with both hands and whispers something so soft, even the wind doesn't hear. And now it watches. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some oral histories suggest that after a moai was raised, the clan would host a massive celebration. Drums, dances, feasting, and that the energy of the celebration helped charge the statue's mana. Kind of like plugging it in with joy. You don't know if that's historically accurate, but the party that night feels electric. Drums echo off the rocks. Torches light up the ahu like a glowing altar. There's laughter and stomping, and a dance that, if done poorly, looks like someone trying to shoo a ghost from their sandals. You try it anyway. You're definitely shooing ghosts. Matua finds you by the fire. He offers you a carved token, a miniature moai made from driftwood. It's lopsided, the nose too wide, the mouth a little crooked. It's perfect. For your ancestor, he says. You turn it over in your hands, unsure whether to thank him or cry. So you do both very subtly. Later, you walk alone toward the platform. The moai stands silent in the moonlight, its face unreadable, its eyes still blank for now. Soon it will receive its coral gaze. Soon it will see. But even without eyes, you feel it watching. And, strange as it sounds, you feel it smiling. Dawn creeps in slowly, brushing pinks and oranges across the horizon as you sit beside the moai you helped create, now standing proud atop its ahu. The wind is cool and light, brushing through the tall grass and rustling the red scoria, pakeo atop the statue's head. It's quiet, sacred, like the island is holding its breath. But no rest for the reverent. You still have one more step to witness, giving the moai its eyes. Matua appears at your side, holding a bundle wrapped in palm leaves. He unties the twine, and nestled inside are two pale, oval shapes, carved from white coral, smooth and impossibly clean despite their age. In the center of each, a circle of polished red scoria glints in the sun. They're beautiful in the unsettling way that things not meant to move often are. These are not just eyes, Matua says softly. They are the breath. You want to ask what that means, but something about his tone suggests you're better off experiencing it than trying to explain it. You follow him to the ahu, where the clan is already gathering. The priest holds a bowl of scented water, and as each elder dips their hands into it, they touch the moai's base, then their own forehead. You do the same. The water is cold, sharp, filled with crushed mint and something sweet, maybe ginger. A cleansing before awakening. Here's your mainstream fact. While only one set of moais has been found in near-complete form, archaeologists believe they were widely used during key ceremonies, installations, harvest festivals, or spiritual consultations. Some statues may have received their eyes only temporarily, others permanently. Regardless, Placing the eye signified the moment a moai came fully alive. With great care, Matua sends the latter resting against the statue's chest. One by one, he presses the coral pieces into the shallow grooves carved earlier. They slide in snugly, securely, and just like that it sees. Even though you know it's symbolic, the effect is immediate and eerie. The blank expression is gone, replaced by something present, something aware. You step back, unable to shake the feeling that the moai now knows who you are. Maybe not your name, but your presence, your role in its becoming. And here comes the fringe tidbit. Some island legends tell of moai weeping after receiving their eyes. Not tears like yours or mine, but mist collecting around their gaze, dripping down in thin, silvery trails. A few old stories say the moai would cry for the ancestor they once were. Others say the tears were for the people they now must protect forever. You glance at the moai. No tears. Not yet. But there's definitely mist in the air. The ceremony ends in quiet. No dancing this time. Just stillness and the sound of waves crashing in the distance. The moai stands tall, its gaze sweeping the land. If it were human, you'd say it looks proud, or possibly annoyed with the weather. Hard to tell with stone. Matua walks with you along the coastline. He tells you stories, not all of which you understand, and a few you're pretty sure he's making up as he goes. One involved a moai that refused to face inland, turning slightly overnight for 3 days straight until the clan gave up and rotated its platform. Another tells of a statue that cracked cleanly in half when someone tried to move it during a blood moon. Superstition, you ask. He shrugs. Maybe. Or maybe stone listens better than people. Here's a historical debate that fits perfectly. Many researchers still puzzle over why construction of moai ceased so suddenly. Around the late 1600s, production seems to have dropped off, and many statues in the quarry were abandoned mid-carving. Some blame ecological collapse, deforestation, over-farming, dwindling resources. Others point to social upheaval, rival clans, spiritual shifts, even European contact. Whatever the cause, the silence was sharp. The carvers stopped. The quarries went quiet. The stone slept again. You and Matua sit on a low ridge, looking down at your moai one last time. He tells you that some carvers believed their spirits lived on through the statues, that as long as a moai stood, a part of its maker remained. You glance down at your dirt-smeared fingers, the calluses along your palms, the red dust beneath your nails. You feel a strange lightness, a release. Later, you walk alone past other ahu, some with standing moai, some with toppled ones. One lies face down in the grass, its features buried. You pause beside it and sit quietly, feeling the weight of all that history pressing gently on your shoulders. Not crushing, just reminding you it's there. A younger villager joins you. He's barely into his teens, holding a piece of coral like a toy. Did you carve one? He asks. You nod. Will it fall? You think about that. About storms. About time. About belief. Not today, you say. He smiles. Mine won't either. He runs off, barefoot and loud, the way only kids can be when they're still writing their legends. And you sit a moment longer, staring up at the sky where clouds drift like pieces of broken statues, waiting to be shaped. The days roll by in waves, slow, sunlit, and soft. You stay near the moai, watching as it settles into the rhythm of its new home. The villagers come and go. They bring offerings of fruit, leave palm leaf bundles filled with crushed shells, and sometimes sit silently in front of the statue, murmuring things too quiet to catch. The moai says nothing, but it listens. One morning, Matua finds you tracing the groove of its jaw with your eyes, wondering how the features you chiseled now seem different. Sharper, softer, more alive. You're not sure if it's the angle or just your imagination. Or maybe, and this seems oddly likely, the moai is adjusting to its role, like a person slipping into a rope too big and growing into it. There's a story, Matua says. That moai speak when no one listens. You raise an eyebrow. And what do they say? He grins. Mostly complaints. Cold feet. Boredom. tourists. You laugh, but you also glance up at your statue again, just in case. Here's your historical note for today. While Rapa Nui culture flourished for centuries around these statues, a sharp decline in moai construction and upkeep came long before European contact. Some believe internal conflict, known as the Huri Moai period, led to the purposeful toppling of many statues. Clans fought for resources, and part of that battle may have involved cutting down each other's spiritual icons. You can almost hear the arguments echoing through time. You broke my moai, I break yours. But it wasn't petty. It was existential. If the moai represented ancestors, toppling them was more than vandalism. It was a spiritual severing, a way to take the wind from your enemy's soul. You walk the coast that evening, the wind at your back. Off in the distance, you see a line of toppled moai, faces half buried in earth, their once powerful stares now turned to soil. It's quiet, save for the occasional call of seabirds and the crunch of dry grass beneath your feet. One statue lies in a field, not fallen but never finished. Its face is smooth and unformed, its body incomplete. Some say these unfinished moai were abandoned due to accidents, rock fractures, political shifts, maybe even the carver's death. But Matua once suggested something stranger. Sometimes, he said, the ancestor isn't ready yet, or maybe it already returned to the wind. You stop beside a toppled moai whose features are still striking. High brows, a long, proud nose, lips sealed tight as if it's keeping a very old secret. You press your hand against its cheek and feel the coldness of centuries beneath your skin. There's no chant, no ceremony, just the raw presence of a life once remembered, now sleeping in stone. Later that night, you help prepare part of the ahu. Some stones have shifted. You and a handful of villagers, young, strong, and perpetually sarcastic, lift and reposition the basalt blocks while trading jokes and whispered tones. Think the moai are watching. One of them asks. You look over your shoulder. Yours stands tall under the starlight, coral eyes dim but piercing. Always, you reply. And here comes today's quirky tidbit. Some visitors to Rapa Nui claim to feel an uncanny pull when near the moai. Not fear exactly, more like awe, a pressure behind the eyes, a tingle in the spine. Even in modern times, the statues provoke something beyond logic, an ancestral echo that transcends culture. Call it mana, call it memory, or just really good sculpture. The night ends with quiet singing. The same elder who once touched the statue's jaw now hums a slow, wavering song that sounds more like wind through palm fronds than anything melodic. But you hum along anyway, eyes closed, letting the sound sink into your chest. And then another story. This one whispered over smoldering coals by a young woman with sea glass eyes and a woven necklace shaped like a fishhook. There was once a moai that wandered, she begins. You scoff lightly. Like moved, she nods solemnly. Every full moon, it took a single step, always toward the sea. And then, one night it wasn't there. You raise your eyebrows. Let me guess, it walked into the water? She shrugs. Maybe. Or maybe it reached the ancestor it had been looking for. You don't know whether she believes the story, or just likes telling it. Either way, it lingers with you as you lie in your sleeping mat, staring at the star-pocked sky. You imagine your moai turning its head slowly, stretching its long stone legs, and vanishing into the Pacific without a splash. Historians still argue whether the myths of the walking statues arose purely from oral exaggeration, or if they contain hints of lost rituals and techniques we've yet to understand. You're not sure what you believe anymore. What you do know is this. The moai is never just a rock. It is effort. It is memory. It is people shaping time with their hands and handing it forward, face first, toward the generations they will never meet. And for now it stands. That's enough. You wake with the sound of gulls wheeling overhead and the soft hush of waves in your ears. A light mist rolls across the island, wrapping the moai in a silver veil. It stands like always, silent, watchful, eternal. But today, Matua says, you leave it behind. The thought gives you pause. It's strange how quickly you got used to the presence of this carved face. this immovable guardian. It has no voice, no movement, no breath, but you've come to feel its company like an old friend who never interrupts, but always listens. The idea of walking away feels wrong. Matua, of course, has no time for sentiment. Moai doesn't need you now, he says, chewing a root with zero ceremony. You finished your part. You nod, but your heart stays back by the ahu. Still, there's no arguing with him, and honestly, it's starting to feel like arguing with the Moai itself might be easier than changing Matua's mind. Your next destination, the quarry. Again, not because you left your tools behind, though you did lose your chisel twice, and it's definitely someone else's now, but because another carving has begun. A new Moai, a new ancestor, a new chance to remember someone in stone. Matua says you're ready to help train the next carver. That's right. Somehow, you've graduated from apprentice to mini Matua, which is both flattering and terrifying. Here's a mainstream historical fact to chew on while you hike back to Reino Raraku. Recent archaeological research suggests that the Moai quarry was not just a workplace, but a kind of sacred workshop. Nearly half of all Moai on the island are found in or around the quarry itself, many incomplete, half-finished, or resting in stages of being born from the cliffside. Scholars believe these may not have been abandoned due to failure, but left intentionally. Maybe the site itself was a spiritual place, where statues didn't need to be moved to hold power. Maybe they watched over the workers. Maybe they were meant to stay. As you walk through the tall grasses and past the partially carved giants, you begin to see the quarry differently, not as a factory, but a forest made of stone people in all stages of becoming. Some lie flat, some stand tall, some seem to sink into the earth like it's trying to reclaim them. Matua leads you to a new stone face, just beginning to emerge from the rock. You remember how to start? He asks, offering you the carving pick. You hesitate, just long enough for him to grunt in amusement. Don't worry, it's already in you. So you start. The first few strikes are tentative. The volcanic rock gives slightly under your tool, soft but stubborn, like a loaf of stale bread. You fall into rhythm, hearing the familiar tap-tap chunk, feeling your breath match the pace. You start to see the outline of a nose, and already, your brain tries to imagine the rest. Who will this statue be? What will it remember? Matua doesn't interrupt. He just sits nearby, sharpening another tool and occasionally throwing rocks at a crow that keeps stealing his fruit. Here's a quirky little detail that comes up as you work. Some researchers believe that Moai were carved with slight asymmetries on purpose. That's right, not mistakes, intentional quirks. A slightly crooked eye, an off-center mouth. The theory goes that these made each statue feel more lifelike, more human. Or maybe they represented the flaws of the ancestors they embodied. You look at the slope of the nose you're forming and wonder if it should be a little bent. Just a little, like it's been through something. As the day burns on, the wind picks up. The crows circle lower. One of them perches on the edge of your Moaian progress and stares at you like it's evaluating your progress. Matua tosses another pebble. The crow does not care. During a break, he finally speaks again. You know, he says, no one really knows who carved the first Moai. You pause, squinting up at him. Not even you. You joke. He doesn't laugh. Instead, he runs his thumb across a deep scar on his arm. The old chants say the first statue carved itself, rose from the earth with a face already formed. All we did was give it a body. Historians still argue whether the first Moai came from oral tradition passed down from Polynesian ancestors or were purely an invention of Rapa Nui culture itself. Either way, the mystery remains. Why here? Why this island? And why stone? As the sun lowers and the cliff shadows stretch like long fingers, your new carving already has a nose and part of a brow. You step back and wipe your face, coated in dust again, your old uniform. And again, you feel that strange sense of connection, that you're not just sculpting for someone, but with them, like the ancestor is beneath the rock, guiding your hand, and your job is just to listen. Matua claps you on the back, nearly knocking you into the dirt. Good start, he says. Won't survive a storm, but maybe a light drizzle. You smile, because that's basically a glowing review in his language. That night, you lie near the quarry, once more beneath the watchful silhouettes of statues old and new. Some stare toward the ocean, some lie flat, eyes half-formed, lips mid-sentence, and you wonder, if your own memory were carved into stone, what would your face look like? By now, your muscles have settled into a strange kind of comfort, always sore, always dusty, but strangely content. You wake each morning near the stone that's slowly becoming a face, greeted by the sound of picks tapping rock and wind sweeping across the quarry. There are fewer words here, just movement, rhythm, and the deep satisfaction of shaping something that might outlive everyone you know. Today, Matua brings a visitor. He's older than most of the villagers you've met. His hair is seafoam gray, pulled back with a cord, and he carries a walking stick etched with tiny moai heads all the way down the shaft. You immediately assume he's a priest or a historian, but Matua just shrugs. He's a talker, he says. Ask him something. You try. How did the moai come to be? The old man snorts like you just asked how rocks work. They were called, he says. Simple. Ancestors whisper. Stone listens. And with that, he begins weaving stories. Some clearly myths, others sounding oddly factual, and a few so odd you're pretty sure he's just messing with you. Like the one about the moai that sang to fish and convinced them to leap straight into cooking fires. Or the statue that predicted rain by turning slightly pink in the cheeks. You're about to question that last one when he fixes you with a wink. You can't prove it didn't happen. Here's a historical fun fact. The oral traditions of Rapa Nui weren't written down until European contact in the 18th century, and even then, much was filtered through translators or missionaries, which means much of what we know about Moai legends might be colored, distorted, or incomplete. The real stories? They may have vanished with the generations who carved them, and that brings us to the quirky bit. Rongo Rongo. The old man draws a quick spiral in the dirt beside your feet, then another. A set of glyphs resembling birds, fishhooks, and tiny abstract figures. This, he says, tapping the drawing, is how we really remember. Rongo Rongo is a mysterious script found on wooden tablets across the island, discovered in the 19th century. To this day, no one has definitively translated it. It might be an early form of writing, a mnemonic device for chants, or a ceremonial record. It might even hold the secrets of the moai, but the code remains unbroken. Historians still argue whether Rongorongo was invented independently or inspired by early European contact. The symbols bear no obvious connection to known Polynesian languages. Some experts insist it's writing. Others say it's glorified doodling. Everyone agrees it's tantalizing. The old man smiles as you stare at the symbols. They say the moai can read it. He whispers. We just forgot how to ask. Later that day, you return to carving. The stone beneath your hands feels different now, like it might be watching. Or maybe it's just the way the wind curves through the quarry hollows, carrying the moans and huffs of unfinished statues, like the breathing of sleeping giants. Your new moai begins to take shape. You've finished the brow line, and now you're carving the nose, more refined than the last one, slightly tilted, with a narrower bridge. You try to make it feel distinct. You want this one to carry a unique presence, as if it knows something your first one didn't. During a break, Matua brings you to a nearby moai half buried in the earth, lying on its back with only its nose and forehead visible above the grass. The stone is smooth, worn by centuries of wind and rain. No one remembers who carved this one, he says. You frown. Does that matter? He doesn't answer, just rests his hand on the stone and closes his eyes. It's not about being remembered, you realize. It's about remembering. You spend that evening tracing glyphs into your own carving. Not full rongorongo, but simple symbols. A wave, a bird, a spiral. You don't know what they mean, but you feel like the stone might understand, or at least appreciate the effort. You ask Matua if the carvers of old had symbols, signatures, some way to leave a mark. He grins and lifts his shirt to reveal a tattoo on his rib cage. It's small, a triangle made of 3 lines. Every stone I carve, he says, I mark it. Not for pride, for connection. You stare at your hands, dusty and cracked, and begin to understand that carving isn't about art or glory. It's about continuation, a thread tied between generations, stretched through time and anchored in stone. That night, the sky clears, no mist, no clouds, just stars, dozens, hundreds, the Southern Cross blinking overhead, mirrored faintly in the dark curve of a tide pool below. You walk alone, stopping by the moai you carved weeks ago. It still stands tall on its ahu, eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. You sit beside it and whisper the symbols you've been practicing. The moai doesn't answer, of course, but the wind stirs. Somewhere behind you, a bird calls once, then goes quiet. It's enough. By now, the island feels like part of your skin. You know the way the cliffs groan before a storm, the way the palm trees whisper when no one's speaking, the feel of pumice dust under your fingernails. Even the moai, those impassive giants, seem somehow more familiar. You stop seeing them as statues and start recognizing them as well people. Just extremely quiet, extremely patient people who happen to be made of volcanic tuff. The new moai you've been carving now has a full face. It's not quite complete. Still needs the ears shaped, the pakeo quarried. And let's be honest, the shoulders are a bit uneven. But the expression is there. Strong, reflective, a little sad. You didn't plan it that way. But somehow the chisel had its own idea. Matua notices too. This one remembers something, he says. You ask what it remembers. He shrugs. Maybe it's not its memory. Maybe yours. There's a silence between you, filled with the sigh of sea breeze and distant gull cries. Then he stands up and claps dust from his palms. You ready? He asks. You assume he means the next step in carving, but instead, Matua leads you away from the quarry, through the tall grasses, down a narrow path winding through scrub and stone, and eventually to a hidden cove. At the center of this cove is a platform, not a formal ahu, but a smaller one, partly overgrown, partly buried. It's surrounded by broken fragments of coral, bird bones, and oddly shaped stones. On the platform itself lies something unexpected, a fallen moai head, just a head, no body, no platform, just resting there, tilted sideways, as if it's been sleeping for centuries. Matua kneels beside it and begins brushing off the debris. You join him, carefully lifting away twigs and dirt until the head is fully exposed. It's not large, about the size of a boulder, but it has the classic moai shape. Broad nose, heavy brow, mouth drawn into a line of silence. And here's today's quirky historical tidbit. They're actual moai that exist only as heads, buried so deep in earth and time that their full bodies weren't discovered until archaeologists excavated them. For decades, people believed the head statues were just that, until the slopes of Reino Raraku revealed their hidden torsos. This one, though, was never attached to a body. You can tell by the way the base was finished flat, a standalone sculpture. Matua traces a circle around the base with his walking stick. Some say these were scouts, he says, sent ahead to find the path. You raise an eyebrow. Sent by who? The others, he replies. The ones that walk. You're not sure if he's joking. You're not sure you want to ask. He gestures for you to sit, and once you do, he begins humming. It's not a chant you recognize, more like a lullaby, the kind of song that feels older than lyrics. You find yourself swaying to it, feeling it, and slowly, a new realization creeps in. You're not here to carve this moai. You are here to listen to it. Here's a mainstream fact with splash of mystery. Some Rapa Nui elders claim that not all moai were meant to be raised. Some, they say, were placed purposefully in hidden locations, ritual sites, sacred cove altars, or spots aligned with the stars, to hold specific spiritual tasks. These weren't ancestors to be honored. They were guardians, messengers, gateways. Historians still argue whether these lesser-known moai served a separate purpose, or were simply unfinished or misplaced. Some suggest they marked spiritual thresholds. Others propose they were used in rituals lost to time. As the sun begins to dip, Matua begins telling a story you haven't heard yet. Before the first boats came, he says, the Moai could still speak. You glance at him. They spoke in dreams. Not words, images. Feelings. They choose a person, usually a carver, and show them what needed to be remembered. It's not always history. Sometimes it's warnings. Warnings of what? You ask. He leans in close and whispers, forgetting. That night, back at your new carving, you can't stop thinking about that head in the cove. Its expression, the placement, the fact that no one, apparently, visits it often. But it's there. It's always been there. You sit in front of your own Moai and study its features. You remember your first hesitant strikes, the first curve of its nose, the asymmetry you left in the lip on purpose. It does remember something. You can feel it. So you speak aloud, just to see what happens. You tell it about your journey, how you arrived here thinking you'd be a tourist, or maybe an accidental sculptor, and ended up carrying stones and carving faces and leaving pieces of yourself in volcanic dust. You tell it about the fallen Moai in the cove. You tell it that you're not ready to forget. And as the wind picks up and the stars prick through the velvet sky, you swear, just for a second, you hear a sound, a low rumble, not thunder, not wind, almost like breath. You smile. You return to the cove before sunrise. The sky still dark and bruised with stars. The head lies just where you left it, cradled in salt-slick grass and silence. You half expect Matua to be there again, waiting, grinning like he knew you'd come back. But he's not. It's just you and the stone face. And somehow that's enough. You kneel beside it, brushing off the new layer of mist and sand that's gathered overnight. A snail has claimed the top of the Moai's forehead like a throne. You gently relocate it to a nearby rock. Royalty deserves better accommodations. As the light grows, soft and golden, you notice something new. The base of the Moai, what you thought was flat, is etched. Faint, almost erased by weather and time, but they're all the same. A spiral, a crescent, a line of dots. Not Rongorongo exactly, but something like it. A personal script, a message, maybe a signature, maybe a warning, maybe a memory so private it was buried face down for centuries. You trace the carvings with your fingertip, and a strange thought occurs to you. What if every Moai is part of a sentence? An epic written in stone, stretched across the hills and cliffs, read only by the wind and the sea? It's the kind of idea Matua would love. You spend the morning at the cove, not speaking, not carving, just sitting with the Moai head like it's an old friend. And in a way it is. Not your ancestor, maybe, but someone's. Someone long gone but not forgotten. Not while this head still lies here, eyes closed, dreaming. Later, you make your way back to the quarry, where your own Moai is nearly ready. The ears are finished, the neck squared off. You're just waiting for the team to help free it from the back wall of stone, the final step before it can be lowered and stood upright. Matua greets you with a grunt and a nod. He's holding a small bundle wrapped in palm fiber. He sets it down beside you, and when you open it, your breath catches. 2 pieces of white coral, carefully carved, polished, waiting to become eyes. These are yours now, he says. But we haven't even raised it yet. He nods. That's not the point. You hold them carefully. They're lighter than you imagined. Fragile, alive in their own strange way. You wonder if the stone will recognize them, if it will blink once they're placed, if it will see you the way you've come to see it. Here's your historical moment. Some Moai were never given eyes. Others had theirs removed over time, either through erosion, deliberate ritual, or looting. The statues that still retain their original coral eyes are incredibly rare and deeply revered. Some locals say these Moai still remember the world before forgetting began. That's your phrase of the day, before forgetting. As you help the crew free your Moai from the quarry wall, you feel that phrase rolling through your head like ocean foam. Before forgetting, before losing the chance. The glyphs, the voices, the knowing, all these statues, all this stone, is an act of remembering. And when your Moai finally leans forward, pulled gently by ropes and slid onto a sled platform, you feel something click in your chest. A weight, yes, but also a lightness. You did it again. And this time, you understood it. That evening, before it begins the slow procession toward its ahu, you sit alone beside it one last time. You press your palm to its shoulder. The stone is warm from the day's sun. You whisper to it, not words you've practiced, but ones that come unbidden, something like a blessing, something like a farewell. Then, with hands still dusty, you take one of the coral eyes from the bundle and gently set it on the statue's chest. Not yet, you tell it, but soon. Mature finds you afterward, staring out toward the ocean. He grunts, as usual, then says, "You staying?" You think about that, about the moai still in the quarry, the unfinished ones, the buried ones, the ones that will never stand but still matter. "I don't know," you reply. "I thought I'd leave once the statue was done." He smirks. Statues are never done. They're just paused. And that's the thing, isn't it? The moai are never finished. Not really. They keep gathering meaning. Year after year, storm after storm. Each visitor layering them with new questions, new reverence, new confusion. Even toppled, they speak. Even buried, they breathe. As the stars rise and the wind picks up again, you glance over your shoulder toward the hill, where dozens of stone faces peer inland, still and steady. You think about the ones who carved them, the ones who dreamed them, the ones who stood beneath their gaze and whispered things you'll never know. And you whisper back, just in case they're still listening. The moai's journey to its ahu is slow, not because of the distance, though it is a trek, but because of the reverence. Every step, every shift of the ropes, every soft grunt from the team, feels weighted by centuries of repetition. This isn't just transport, it's ritual. You stand at the front, guiding the ropes with calloused hands. Behind you, a crew of villagers, young and old, men and women, sings a low, rhythmic chant. Not to you, not to each other, to the moai, for balance, for strength, for memory, and for safety. Because one wrong tilt and several tons of ancestor could decide gravity is a better home. The technique is ancient, but effective. Rock the statue slightly to the left, then forward, then to the right, like coaxing it into a slow, deliberate waddle. This method, called walking the moai, is a hot debate among archaeologists. Historians still argue whether this was the real transport technique or if it's a modern recreation based on oral history. Some insist sleds and log rollers were used. Others point to legends about the statues walking themselves, guided by spiritual energy or ancestral chants. The walking method has actually been replicated in modern experiments, and to everyone's delight, it works. Awkwardly, but it works. Of course, you're not thinking about academic debates right now. You're thinking about the ropes cutting into your palms, the sweat rolling down your back, and the sense of something bigger moving with you, something invisible but heavy, like a wave just behind you that never quite crests. As the sun crests, the ahu comes into view. It's new, still being shaped. Flat stones for the platform, coral fragments tucked around the edges, and a few small offerings already waiting at the base. Shell necklaces, woven mats, small carved birds. Not gifts for the statue exactly, gifts for the memory inside. You finally reach the platform. With painstaking coordination and a few choice curses under your breath, you and the team maneuver the moai onto its base. There's no cheering, just a collective, quiet breath, like the island itself is exhaling. And then the eyes. You unwrap the coral discs from their palm fiber bundle and climb the small ladder beside the moai's face. Its features look different from this angle, less solemn, more curious, like it's been waiting for this moment just as long as you have. You press the eyes into place, and suddenly it sees. There's no lightning, no trumpet blast revelation, just a shift in presence. Before it was stone, now it's watching. The crowd below is still. One child whispers something in her mother's ear and points. You don't hear what she says, but the mother nods. Later, there's a feast. Roasted fish wrapped in banana leaves, yams boiled with coconut milk, sweet drinks passed in carved gourds. You sit among the villagers, legs stretched out, dust on your clothes, a satisfied ache in every bone. Matua joins you. holding a cup of something fizzy and mildly suspicious. "Well," he says, "it didn't fall." "Not yet," you reply. He laughs, a deep belly laugh that makes the kids turn to look. One of them copies it. Another spits fish. You eat. You listen. You rest your head on your knees and close your eyes. And for a moment, you could swear you feel the moai watching not with scrutiny, but with gratitude, or maybe pride. Or maybe that's just what happens when you stare at a rock long enough and share your soul with it. Either way, it's comforting. Before you leave the celebration, you walk back to the statue. It looms above you now, coral eyes faintly luminous in the moonlight. You place your hand on the base stone and press your forehead gently against it, just as the elders do. You whisper, "You remember me, okay?" The stone says nothing, but the wind shifts. Here's your final quirky tidbit. Some islanders believe that if you dream of a moai after carving one, it means your spirit has been folded into its stone. That when someone stands before it years or centuries later, they might feel you looking back. And honestly, that doesn't sound like such a bad afterlife. As you walk away, past the cliffs and the quarry and the cove with the head, you leave behind a part of yourself. Not in a sad way, in the way seeds are left, the way memories are planted. You'll carry dust in your lungs for months. Your back will probably never forgive you. But every time you close your eyes, you'll see that face, that calm, silent gaze watching the island like it always has and always will. And maybe someday, someone will find your moai, brush off the years, and wonder who carved it, who stood before it, who remembered what. Maybe they'll feel your breath in the stone. And maybe, just maybe, you'll dream of them too. Now the moai stands, silent beneath the stars. The chants have faded, the torches have gone cold, and only the soft wind rustles the palms along the distant cliffs. You're lying in the grass near the ahu, staring at the curve of the sky, where the Southern Cross tilts slowly toward the ocean. Your hands are still dusty. Your arms ache, but not in a way that asks for anything. Just in that gentle, earned way. Like your muscles remember the story even when your mind starts to drift. The statue is watching, not just the land or the sea, but time. And maybe it's watching you too, seeing not just what you've done, but all the thoughts and feelings you never said aloud. That's what the moai do best. They witness. Quietly, eternally. The island breathes slow now. Every sound softens into lullaby. Waves hush the shoreline. Leaves murmur in the canopy. Far off, an owl calls once, then nothing. And your eyelids begin to sink. You feel the earth beneath you. Not hard, not cold, but solid like the moai. Holding you, grounding you, letting you go. So sleep easy now. Let the dust settle. Let the memories shape themselves in dreams the way stone shapes under your hand. You've carved something into time itself, and time is grateful.